Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest edition of Tales from Outer Space. Hope you enjoy. Story number 1. Flower Folk, written by Major Disaster. There is much confusion, panic, and rumors regarding the self-proclaimed humans. I've heard people speak of them in hushed voices, saying that they are a threat. They are not like us. They are not flower folk. Some have gone so far as to call them defilers. None of this is true, and I will not stand to let such falsehoods persist. Allow me to set the record straight. We first found them on their homeworld, before they developed spaceflight. Having found a new life-bearing planet, the exploration vessel searched for and found the presence of civilization on their world, belonging to a species that called themselves humans. There was advanced life on the world. Then they had to determine which form of life it was. The vessel could not conclude what type of beings the humans were without making contact. There was all sorts of conflicting indicators about their nature. A survey team found a significant military presence on the planet, causing them to fear for the worst. However, they also found evidence of numerous forms of artwork contradicting the implications of dedicated military forces. We couldn't determine from a distance what they were exactly, so we took a risk and contacted them. They were willing to talk to us, and not only that, they confirmed the reports of the presence of art, painting, sculpture, stories. They had just as great a richness and variety of culture as any of us. We were happy to inform them that they were flower folk. The rumor that they are not so comes from their initial denial of such a thing. However, they did not know about our classification of creatures at the time. They told us that they were mammalian and not plant-based life forms. So, like any other new race, we had to explain to them the metaphorical nature of the species classification. Species are categorized based on traits that are likened to various plant types that are universally prevalent on virtually all life-bearing worlds. For example, tree-type creatures tend to be large, hulking things that face few threats. However, their lives are somewhat too static to reach full sapience and civilization-creating levels of intelligence. For the humans, an example would be elephants. Grass types are small, exceedingly numerous, but are far too basic to be sapient. All the insects, arachnids, and small vermin and other such creatures on the human homeworld fall under this category. There are a few other categories, but the most important one is the flower type. Flowers across all worlds are considered beautiful things. Some of the prettiest sights of the natural world is the displays given by flowers. Likewise, flower types are the sentient beings who have grown and developed enough that they do not focus on mere survival, but on beauty as well. The creation of works of art, not just for pragmatic reasons, but for the purpose of making something beautiful, is what makes the species a flower type. The flower folk make up all the species of the various nations of our space-faring society. Humans were not publicly recognized as flower folk at first because they did not have a flower name. Although some species still keep their original name alongside their new one, all flower folk are given a new name based on the flower on their world that they best represent. For example, my people are the Milius folk, named after a particularly thin-petaled flower, which is known for being very short-lived, and its seeds do not grow until the flower that made them expired. Likewise, our species is also known for being rather slender, and while our individual lives are shorter than everyone else's, our young only wake up after their parents have died, remembering some of the skills and memories their parents had, eliminating the mental infancy stage of growth. Another example is the Kilmalane folk, both the flower and the people possessing color-changing petals and scales, respectively. Then there is the Pankyuk folk. Pankyuk folk is known for being able to genetically intermingle with all other forms of flowers on their world. I hope I don't need to explain further. Moving on, humans had a problem with this naming convention. They couldn't decide which flower represented their people the best. no matter what anyone suggested, there were hundreds of others saying that they were wrong, and some other flowers was better suited. We gave them time, but they never reached a consensus in the matter. We were still trying to figure out how to resolve the issue when the Defilers attacked. Defilers. They are the one type of creature that isn't given a pretty metaphorical name like all the others. They don't deserve it. They are those intelligent enough to master space travel, but they are not even remotely civilized. They do nothing but kill and burn and destroy. Their only purpose for their existence is to wreck and ravage anything they come across. They take everything beautiful and crush it to pieces while poisoning the earth so it can never flourish again. They destroy worlds and nations, leaving behind worthless land and barren ruins. The Defilers attacked, and we had no choice but to flee. We mobilized as many ships as we could to evacuate as many people from our doomed worlds. Except the humans. While they allowed some to be evacuated, they insisted that they would stand their ground. They didn't stand a chance, but we provided them the technology they requested anyway. They'd need it if they wanted to run away once they realized the harsh, hopeless reality that they were facing. No cultured species can put up a fight against those who focus entirely on war and killing. Some of us lingered during our mass exodus, but the rest of the humans didn't come. We assumed they'd failed to leave before getting cut off and had been wiped out. Tragic, but at least there were still a few of their kind on our ships. Unfortunately, the rear of our fleets had waited too long and began to get harried by the Defilers. Unable to lose them, the whole fleet, all that remained of our society, was at risk. But surprisingly, the Defilers stopped attacking, turned to face where they'd come from. Pursuing the Defilers, a fleet of human ships followed, but they didn't look like our ships. They looked like the Defiler ships, built for war. They had thick, sturdy hulls, and they bristled with weapons. The Defilers' ships were smaller and less numerous, and they were crushed. The human ships told us that they had turned the tide, and they were forcing the Defilers to retreat. They weren't dead, but they were wounded, and the humans vowed to finish the job if they ever returned. So here we are, moving back into our homes and rebuilding what the Defilers tore down. And all these rumors about the humans. And the simple matter is, people don't trust the humans because they don't even have a proper name or an explanation for their actions. If they're a flower folk, what are they called? Why are they so capable of war? Well, I am happy to say, then, that they have finally found a flower suitable to be named after that reflects on their nature. From henceforth, they will be known as the Rose Folk. They are just as beautiful as any other flower, but if you try and harm them, you'll learn a very painful lesson. Every rose has its thorns. End of story. Story number 2. Collateral is the favorite kind of damage. Written by Dragonson04. To say that the humans of the Sol System expressed ingenuity in war was a gross understatement. While they followed the letter of the laws regarding conflict, they hardly, if ever, followed the spirit of the laws. They exploited loophole after loophole due to vague wording. In the case of the Articles of War, Section 15, Paragraph 5, no ship shall be armed with more than a sufficient amount of weaponry, not exceeding 100 individual weapon placements, 50 ship-to-ship placements, or 10 weapons considered to be ship killers. So, what did the humans do? They completely abandoned putting weapons on their larger ships. Little more than redundant hull plating stacked on thousands of layers and thrusters at the rear, and then they called it a ship. Some humans called them hammer ships. You can imagine the results. These raw heaps of metal crashing their way through fleets and causing untold chaos. In the Articles of War, Section 210, Paragraph 23, natural space debris, such as asteroids, comets, and similar, shall only be used as defensive weapons. either through their natural motions or with the light adjustments from tractor beams or cables. Furthermore, they shall only be used in the end of need, when all other ammunition is spent. So, what did the humans do? They made ships that were reasonably strong against physical and energy-based attacks, but with no weapons at all, only tractor beams and cables. They were jokingly called Yeet class by the humans. The end of need requirement was met by having no weapons whatsoever on any of them. They called them asteroid chain shot or asteroid bolus, anchoring 2 or 3 fairly sized asteroids together with hundreds or thousands of miles of cable and then dragging them along with tractor beams. May whatever you believe in protect you from those. This was once one of the earliest weapons used by humans in defense of their home system. Shortly after they had achieved FTL and were noticed by the larger galaxy, the Bakut learned to never underestimate the humans again. In the Articles of War, Section 1, Paragraph 1, no one fleet shall have the capacity to destroy a planet. So, what did the humans do? They created an individual ship that was capable of doing just that, following a very old weapon design they called an A-10. They made a very large ship that was at least 90% gun, thereby following the restriction on number of weapons per ship as stated in Section 15, and yet exploiting the restriction to the hilt. To say the revelation caused a stir was rather timid. The Articles were older than humans. Everyone had followed them for untold centuries, and now this upstart race begins finding loopholes in what was almost sacred text. I, for one, am slightly intrigued at their ingenuity and their ability to exploit a contract. To me, it seems that the Articles are like a line of small obstacles to them. And once they find the way over, around, or through, they'll take it. Report by Lieutenant Kanar Lahia, Tajni Military, written on orders from High Command after debriefing of the discovery of the violations of Article War, Section 1. End of story. I just quickly want to thank the Tier 5 patrons and channel members: Alithia Barkey, Cam Maxwell, Caspar Arnholtz, Albarden Guster, Arcadian, Lord Azrakal, and Joachim Backer.